welcome to today's edition of CARICOM One-on-One. I'm your host, Jascene Malcolm. Today we're going to be talking about climate change and climate resilience because we have been challenged by natural disasters across the region, especially in our smaller island developing states. In particular, in 2017, we had Hurricanes Irma and Maria, which devastated both Dominica and Antigua and Barbuda. And with me today, I have the Minister of Trade from Antigua and Barbuda, the Honorable Chet Greene. Welcome to the program, Minister.
Thank you, Jascene.
Right, and he's going to talk to us about how Antigua and Barbuda, particularly Barbuda, has fared since Hurricane Irma in that country. That was in 2017, right?
That's correct.
All right, tell me, what was it like in Antigua and Barbuda after Hurricane Irma?
Well, let me first of all put the record straight. It was Barbuda that was devastated, not Antigua. Antigua remained up and up for business.
Right.
And luckily so, because otherwise
Absolutely.
it would have been total, chaos.
Right.
Since the passage of the hurricane, what we are doing and have been actively engaged in rebuilding.
Right.
Rebuilding, and the buzzword of resilience is certainly part of what we're doing there. I must admit that the pace of rebuilding is not as fast as we would have liked it to be.
Right, but before we go into talking about the rebuilding, I want you to set the stage for us. Tell us what it was like there first.
Well, near total devastation. 90% plus of the houses lost their roofs. We had to relocate every single citizen from Barbuda to Antigua.
Right.
The state became the custodian, so to speak, where all of their living expenses became a state responsibility. Let me thank the international community, those who contributed to that process of maintaining the Barbudans and, by extension, helping to rebuild the island.
Absolutely.
But it was total, if I may recount very quickly for you, after the hurricane, the first person to visit Barbuda was the Prime Minister, Honorable Gaston Brown.
Right.
When persons were still fearful and scared of leaving their homes, as a true leader, he was on a twin-engine plane going to Barbuda to see the extent of the damages.
Wow.
He was moved, and not only that, but right as he was there, the forecast was for another hurricane, this time Maria.
Right.
Because on the back of Irma, Maria came bearing down. And so the forecast was that he was going to take a direct hit at Barbuda. And so as a government, we had to make a decision.
Pretty scary.
The decision was to evacuate all of Barbuda onto Antigua. We realized that the amount of sea vessels or sea crafts we had could not do the job in a fast enough time. And so we turned to the government of Venezuela.
Wow.
And I want to go on record once again publicly to thank the government of Venezuela for having responded as quickly as it did.
Right, especially with Venezuela
having their own challenges.
Right, no.
It was really a show of support, solidarity.
Absolutely.
One for which we'll be eternally grateful. They sent a military aircraft. I myself was part of the process.
Right.
Went down the aircraft to Barbuda, could not land on the airstrip because that was destroyed or damaged.
Wow.
And so we had to resort to landing on a grass strip.
I can only imagine what that was like.
Before going there, we had the pilot of the military vessel aircraft went to Barbuda himself to inspect the possibility of landing the aircraft on the grass strip. He came back, declared mission a go, and so he went.
Okay.
And with that help, we were able to remove all the Barbudans to Antigua. But by the time they got to Antigua, there were all of the necessary arrangements in place.
Okay.
Every Antiguan and Barbudan, or every Antiguan in this instance, opened their hearts, their homes, their pocketbooks, you name it.
Of course,
to
we are
ensure the comfort of our brothers and sisters from Barbuda. And so that was the narrative that really transpired in that instance.
So since then, Minister, I know it's been almost 2 years. Yes.
Almost 2 months, well, more than 2 months, but 2 months from now,
we're
looking at another hurricane season
and that can be,
It is frightening. It is scary.
Quite so. But with that thought, though, we know that we've been talking about resilience and preparing for, eventualities such as hurricanes and other natural disasters. And I know that in the rebuilding efforts, one of the key components was the idea of making our region climate resilient. How has that gone for Antigua and Barbuda in the rebuilding efforts?
Before I speak to resilience, I must admit that not only Antigua and Barbuda, but the wider Caribbean,
Absolutely.
There's a greater sense of awareness, hence preparation now for storms.
Right.
And so I think once we hit June 1, which is the opening of the hurricane season, there'll be a sense of organization, mobilization, preparedness, effectively so, throughout the region. Rebuilding Barbuda has been a challenge, like I said earlier, because the resources are just not there to do things we would want to do them. And so while we're building resilience, things, for example, of burying all our electrical cables on the ground, we could not do that because that's a significant cost.
Right.
So if we had another hurricane in 2019 or anytime soon, we'd have the challenge of having to, and it flows the infrastructure, we'd have to once again mobilize and go back that whole spiel of rebuilding.
Yeah, and
where the houses are concerned, yes, the architecture, the construction methods and modes are different. We're adding and certainly making sure that there's greater attention to the building code than we had hitherto. And so I feel a sense of satisfaction. The public infrastructure of the schools, the hospital, the police stations, you name it, those are all work in progress. There's a commitment from a friendly government to rebuild a school in Barbuda. Matter of fact, I journeyed to that capital in about a month's time to finalize the arrangements for the construction to commence. Other Caribbean countries would have assisted, like I said earlier. It's natural.
Right.
I mean, I don't want to say anything but humble in this one, but it's natural. Once one capital gets hit or affected by a natural disaster, or any disaster that matter, there is a natural gravitation to that on the part of the others to assist. And I must say that Caribbean civilization has stood the test of time where storms are concerned. And as the Minister of Government Antigua Barbuda speaking on this program here in Guyana, I want to really thank the Guyanese government and people, the other Caribbean jurisdictions that have reached out to Antigua Barbuda in this very important time of need. Of course, in Antigua we have perhaps the largest catchment of Guyanese citizens in any capital city in the Caribbean.
Oh, wow. So then, Minister, would you say that Antigua and Barbuda is definitely more ready for the hurricane season now than it would have been when Irma struck?
As I said, we have to characterize that, or put it in perspective. From an education point of view, from an awareness point of view, yes.
Right.
And that, I think, holds true for the entire region.
Right.
The experiences of Irma and Maria in 2017 were like none other. I think there's a greater sense of understanding and appreciation, or acceptance even, of the types of storms that we're now faced with. I mean, it was not an ordinary category 5 storm, it was 5++.
Yeah.
And the level of devastation it caused in Antigua, in Barbuda, in Dominica, and the BVI, and other Caribbean countries, really brought a sense of awareness and alertness to the people. So I know that from June 1st, the buzz across the region will be hurricanes. What I'd like to do now is, since I think you may go regional, is to remind homeowners in the region of the importance of insuring properties.
Yes.
Home insurance, very important.
Yes.
Because let's face it, the national community will not have the appetite to always be given that level of assistance to rebuild.
Exactly, and not just the appetite, I mean resources are tight all around.
Precisely, and then from the Barbuda experience we've learned that the resources made available by international agencies cannot be used for the rebuilding of private properties.
Right.
And so therefore it really is beholden on private property or homeowners to insure their properties, to ensure that there's at some level of return which can help you to remobilize, to reorganize and to restructure your lives in the aftermath of a storm.
Cool, and that brings me to my next question, well, my final question, Minister. What advice outside of insurance would you give to persons in the region, and not just the Caribbean, because there are other small island developing states across the world and other regions that are affected by hurricanes and monsoons, etc. What advice would you give to persons to prepare? I mean, you can never be fully prepared, but to at least mitigate the effects.
To the extent that we cannot control the atmospheric conditions that give rise to these storms and the destruction that result therefrom, my word of advice would be, 1, to always have that level of preparedness.
Absolutely.
Let us accept that climate change is real. Let us also, based on those 2 factors mentioned earlier, commit ourselves to building with resilience so that we can, mitigate.
Absolutely.
And that there need to be, perhaps at this stage, a need for youngsters, those creative minds, to find ways on this modern web
with new technology.
To help to deal with the issues of climate change and how we can respond and relate to in the first instance and respond. So, for example, after a storm, how do you mobilize to make sure communities are accounted for?
Absolutely.
Before a storm, how do you check to make sure that certain basic services are in place and available? How do we care for elderly, for the infirmed, in the wake of a storm.
Right.
Those are things I think that our young people, especially who are the techies, should start to zero their attention. We cannot just continue to be consumers of technology. We must be making critical contributions to development.
Right.
And I believe Caribbean people, we're the best in the world. We can do it. Sometimes we just don't stop to do it.
We do have the level of creativity.
We can do it.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us for today's program, Minister. It was indeed a pleasure having you.
A pleasure.
Thank you also for joining us for this episode of CARICOM One-on-One. As you know, if you are not liking CARICOM's YouTube channel, now is your opportunity to do so. Hit that like button and also just subscribe and hit the notification bell. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, follow our blog, today.caricom.org, and check out our website, www.caricom.org. It's always a pleasure having you on our program. See you next time.